Ambassador David Martinon, thank you so much for coming through and visiting us here on 702. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your invitation.
To say bonjour.
Bonjour, it's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for making time for us.
Pleasure.
I would like us to start by discussing just what's happening on the international front, because I did see your friend, your president, Emmanuel Macron, speaking yesterday about what the position of France is. Can you just clarify to us whether France has been asked to assist the U.S. and will they be assisting the U.S. in whatever way with this war in Iran?
So France was not informed and hence was not asked to support the operation. We discovered just when the world discovered it. Second, President Macron confirmed yesterday that France is already active, not in support of the American-Israeli operation, but to comply with our commitments on the ground of the bilateral security agreements that France has with some Gulf states, like the Emirates, like Qatar, like Bahrain, like Kuwait, and a few others, after agreements that were actually concluded after the first Gulf War, when the first Gulf War that was triggered by the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. So it's on the ground of these bilateral agreements that the French fleet is now, the French aircraft carrier is now heading to the area, to the zone, the war zone, and that we have already one frigate who is about to reach the same area. And we also have jets who have been protecting the airspace of these countries from our military bases in Qatar and mostly in the Emirates.
Yeah. What do you have an official position, though, as France towards this war in Iran? I mean, for instance, the Spanish Prime Minister was very clear in indicating that they do not support this war and they're not going to provide any form of assistance. And in fact, I think the words he used was, this is unjustified and dangerous military intervention. He condemned the US and Israel's unilateral military action, quote unquote, against Iran. And the warning was that this is going to contribute to a more hostile and uncertain international order. Do you have a formal position as France on what's currently happening in the Middle East?
So the first thing, as I said, is that France was not part of the operation. Second, you must remember that we have been working tirelessly to try and negotiate with the Iranian authorities a path towards peace and towards disarmament for years now, to the point that we managed to get to an agreement with Iran back in 2015. That was a strong and robust agreement,
which the US ended up walking away from
after having signed it.
Yes.
And after a period of time when it actually worked quite well. So, but that's the past. The situation now is that obviously for us, Iran bears a huge responsibility in the situation for having supported what you have said a few minutes ago, have supported terrorist groups around the world. However, we are now trying to find ways to de-escalate, even if we don't really have the cards now. I mean, our first priority now is to take care of our citizens in the region that we are trying to put under protection, notably those who are asking for it and those who are most vulnerable. So this is our position now. This is what we are trying to achieve.
Yeah. Has it proven to be difficult to try and assist some of your citizens that are stuck in the Middle East? And how are you assisting them? Because, I mean, taking them out, evacuating them is going to be a challenge because the airspace is shut down. What ways as France have you tried to intervene and assist some of your civilians that are stuck there?
So there are several ways. Some commercial flights still offer seats, and we are trying to put some passengers and those who are in a rush on them. We are already organizing 2 military flights. Some airspaces are still open, notably Oman And we have managed to evacuate some French citizens from them who were particularly vulnerable.
Okay, I want us to get into the relationship that France and South Africa have. I mean, we've known each other for 30 years since the dawn of our democracy. How would you describe the current health of this relationship between South Africa and France?
How many hours do we have? So what I can say for now is that France and South Africa have, I believe, strong relations, and my job is also to make every effort to strengthen them up even more. We have made progress over the years. We have strong economic ties. We have, you may remember that President Macron committed to accompany South Africa in its just energy transition. And on that topic, along with other partners, and notably Germany, the European Union, and a few others, we have delivered on the promise, on the commitment. We have managed to bring not less than 1 billion euros to the table to accompany again the just energy transition in South Africa. And of that, I think we can be satisfied. The question is now, how do we continue? How on what the lessons we draw is that, one, we did what we said we would do, and two, we did exactly what our South African partners asked us to do. So that was exactly along the lines that were expected by South Africa. We have areas where progress can be achieved, and we are working on that. Obviously, for example, the two presidents met on the eve of the South African G20 summit, and they agreed to improve our bilateral judicial cooperation. And that's very practical, that's very concrete. That's how do we help each other when crimes are committed in France or in South Africa. We believe that we have achieved very substantial progress when it comes to maritime surveillance. Obviously, South Africa is facing challenges in the Mozambique Channel when it comes to human trafficking, narco trafficking, and also the protection of maritime ecosystem. And what we've managed to do is that we've managed to organize joint maritime patrols between our two navies, and that's already a great achievement. It may not look substantial, but it's very concrete, and it's going to help both our countries to protect those maritime protected areas. The two presidents also agreed on the fact that we need to start a strategic dialogue between our two countries, because again, as I just showed you, we have facing challenges together, and we need to be more efficient on that. And and also when it comes to bilateral issues, global issues, it is for us absolutely clear that we share the same values, and that's why France, along with the European and Western partners, most of them have been in support of the South African presidency of the G20, and we were very happy and satisfied that President Ramaphosa managed to get a leader's statement at the Johannesburg summit, and we were very much in favor of it because, again, we share the same values and we share the same objectives, and that's why President Macron told President Ramaphosa that his intention was to bring what has been achieved by the South African G20 presidency inside the G7 presidency, who he's already chairing since January 1st. So all the work that has been done on the cost of development, the cost of capital, climate change, all those topics will be brought by the French presidency in this new G7 mandate.
Yeah.
And also, as a kind of a preparatory step to the G7 summit in France in June, we will be co-organizing with Kenya this Africa Forward Summit in the beginning of May, during which we will again talk about those topics. We will bring entrepreneurs, business people from around the world, from Africa, mostly from Africa and France, to see how we can move forward and what kind of progress we can make on these topics, but also on health, development, business, sports as a way for development, all those kind of topics.
Yeah. All right. It's 18 minutes now after 10 o'clock. After the break, we'll continue this conversation with David Martinon, who is the ambassador of France to South Africa, Lesotho and Malawi. If you've got questions yourself, you can give us a call on 011-883-0702. Maybe you've been observing closely the relationship that South Africa and France has and how it's evolved over the years. Or maybe you are a French citizen yourself who lives in this country. What questions do you have or inputs? You can send your WhatsApps as well on 0727021702.
Let's walk the talk.
This is Clement Manyathela
On 702.
It's 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. We're in conversation this morning with David Martinon, who is the ambassador of France to South Africa, Lesotho and Malawi. We've already reflected on what's currently taking place in the Middle East and trying to get a sense of what the French position is there. We've spoken a little bit about the relationship South Africa and France have, especially around trade discussions that have taken place before and how this relationship has evolved. I want to give you an opportunity as well. If you've got some questions and WhatsApps, you can keep them coming. I want to chat a little bit about where we are aligned, Ambassador, when it comes to global issues. Do you think that we are more opposed, or we find ways to find each other somewhere, but also to respect each other's positions, no matter how much we may disagree?
So I think if we consider, I think we have the same values, but indeed we have nuances which are related to our national histories, and we have to take that into account. But obviously the starting point is that we do share the same democratic values. I mean, South Africa is an incredibly vivid democracy and has been for 30 years, and that's fantastic. And again, this is very comforting for us to know that South African foreign policy has to be guided by its constitutional values. However, it's true that we don't always have the same friendships. And my job is to find ways to answer your last question, which is, how do we get closer? And how do we learn to work better together? So there's one thing on which, again, we absolutely agree, is our attachment, our support to multilateralism. I am always very comforted in the way South African leaders do express their attachment to the UN Charter. And being a founding member of the UN Charter, France is obviously very attached to it. We do acknowledge the fact that it needs reforms, for sure. And for that, we have ideas that we have been promoting for the last 20 years, and notably on the fact that Africa has to be represented in the UN Security Council as a permanent member, or maybe with two permanent members. We also acknowledge, and we've been promoting the fact that other big countries have to be present, and on that we are working together. But it's quite a difficult endeavor, we must say. Yeah.
Speaking of multilateralism, what is, because it almost feels like a lot of countries have to reimagine this world. I think it was the Canadian Prime Minister who says we're naive to think that the old order exists today. How important is that realization, and how are you positioning yourself then as France in the wake of this new way of doing things? Because we speak about multilateralism, it's espoused, it's what South Africa believes in, it's what France believes in, and many other countries. But you've got other powerful countries like the US that are walking away from those ideals, and they believe differently, and they're powerful enough, of course, to change the dynamics, of the geopolitical environment. How do you then position yourself as France? Like, do you need to make changes, rethink how this world operates and your alliances?
So, there has been some, again, when it comes to multilateralism, we do believe that we need to strengthen the UN institutions and not destroy them. We don't need to replace them. We need to continue working in the G20, in the G7. Again, as I said, President Macron and the President of Kenya are convening this summit in May. So it means that we are absolutely convinced that we need to continue building multilateral formats. When it comes to peace and security, so for example, that's because we are attached to the UN Charter, France has not agreed to participate in the Board of Peace. That's President Trump's idea, and we consider that it raises more questions than it solves. We would like it to be more focusing on Gaza than trying to extend its self-given mandate. And so that's for one. When it comes to peace and security, I think France has showed some consistency over the last 70 years with the idea that we are member of NATO. France is a member of NATO with a particular place. However, we have always advocated for a security autonomy for Europe. That's also why General de Gaulle decided that France would have a nuclear deterrence capacity. So this is why since 1960 France has nuclear weapons and has means to deploy them and has means to launch counterattacks or at any moment with the certainty of ensuring casualties or damage that would be so considerable that any attacker would know for sure that it's a bad bet to attack France. And the idea behind that autonomy has always been that we would need to be there for our allies. Would it be the Americans? That's, in the words of former French presidents, an option that has always been on the table. And also to be autonomous. Yeah.
Okay, there are a lot of things you've spoken about that I've got follow-up questions on, including on the Board of Peace. But before I get to it, you've just mentioned then the nuclear weapons. Who is allowed to have nuclear weapons and who is allowed not to have them?
So now, under the Treaty of Non-Proliferation, only those countries who are already have that capability have the right to keep it. All those who haven't signed the treaty are not bound by it. Iran had signed it and hence has not respected the provisions of the non-proliferation treaty, for example.
Did Israel sign it?
Say it again.
Did Israel sign that?
Israel hasn't signed it.
Yeah. Is there no concern, though, that, for instance, for countries that are not signing it, we're unable to tell if they've got nuclear weapons or not? Because, Israel seems to have taken, for instance, a position of ambiguity. Their leaders do not confirm whether or not they've got nukes in Israel. And I wonder if that is not of great concern, because they still want to be able to come out and say, oh, but look at what Iran is doing. They're building nuclear weapons. But when you ask them, do you have nuclear weapons? Can you allow the inspectors to come in? They don't allow inspectors to come in. Is that of great concern, or that's left to the countries themselves to decide, especially because they have not signed that treaty?
So the reality is that Israel has always complied with the inspections of the International Nuclear Agency. They have always allowed inspectors on their territory. And yes,
including the IAEA, because I've heard the director of the IAEA say they've not been able to be on the ground in Israel to be able to produce a report. So if they've gone in, then have they confirmed whether there are nukes or not?
Well, I don't know about that.
Because they would have told us, because they are very transparent. There's no organization that has ever gone to Iran or any other country to inspect if there are nukes and they came back and kept it a secret. And the fact that you and I today are sitting and we don't know for sure if Israel has nukes or not tells you that there hasn't been transparency about either allowing them in, or these organizations have somehow taken a different approach with Israel and they don't want to tell us the truth.
Well, what I can say is that ambiguity is part of the deterrence of the deterrence doctrines of some countries. Not all of them. Some are absolutely not ambiguous about it, but it's the case. I mean, as you said, when you ask them, their answer is usually yes, I read that somewhere. So indeed, you can't say. But my understanding is that inspections were allowed and inspectors could work. But
and inspectors told us what? Nothing.
I don't know about that.
I hope they can come. We have in fact emailed them because we want them to come and tell us, because it doesn't make sense that they can go to Iran and then they can tell us that, oh, this is the level of enrichment, but then they go to Israel and they don't really tell us what's happening there. After the latest in Eyewitness News headlines, we'll look at the Board of Peace and the position that France has taken, refusing to be part of that Board of Peace.
702.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
It's 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Ambassador David Martinon is the ambassador of France to South Africa, Lesotho and Malawi, and he's in conversation with us in studio this morning. I'm going to go to some WhatsApp voice notes in a moment, Ambassador. But before we do, can we just talk about you indicated that you believe in multilateralism, and that's why you've taken this position as France, that you're not going to join the Board of Peace. Donald Trump, the U.S. president, did invite the French president to join, and he said no. And after that, Donald Trump threatened, what was it, a 200% tariffs on French wines and champagnes. Did he actually see that through?
What day of the week are we? Because it kind of changes quite often. So I couldn't say what is the exact state of the situation now, but I can confirm you that there are several provisions in the Board of Peace that we would not be satisfied with them. Notably, the fact that there is no length of the mandate, that there is no real precise scope for the mandate. We thought it would be only for the Gaza situation. It seems that President Trump wants to enlarge it. We understand that the chairmanship of it is in the hands of Donald Trump, not the president of the US, but Donald Trump.
Yes.
So all that for us contradicts the principle of sovereign equality of nations, and it's difficult for us to get into it.
Yeah, because that effectively means that he would be the chair of the Board of Peace even beyond his office.
That's our understanding.
When he has left the White House.
Yeah.
What do you think the intention is, though? Because it almost feels like this Board of Peace is intended to replace the United Nations. I mean, one of the things they said at their first meeting was, we're going to help the UN. The UN needs a lot of help. And I've just struggled with, okay, so you're going to have these Board of Peace that involves a number of current and former leaders who are somehow going to be an overseer of the United Nations. I don't know how that would work.
Well, it looks like someone trying to spin something. We believe that the best way to help the UN is to stick to the UN.
That's the best way to help it. Okay, let's go to some questions that have come through from our listeners. Let me give you an opportunity first to respond to what Tato said on the WhatsApp line about visa-free travel to France, since we're all besties now.
So I can't commit on the price because that's not in my hands. It's in the hands of the National Treasury Directorate, just like here in South Africa. What I can confirm is that the process is actually very quick. So if you bring a comprehensive file, you get your visa, especially here in Johannesburg or in Cape Town, anywhere in South Africa. You usually get your visa in 4 to 5 days.
Yeah, I've gotten mine in 3 days. I can attest to that.
Right, and I can confirm that given the number of South African visitors we had for the Rugby World Cup and the Olympic Games in 24, it works very well.
Yeah. All right, let's go to some WhatsApp voice notes on 072 702 1702.
Good morning, Clement. Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. My question for the ambassador is this. The French president announced that France will be recognizing a Palestinian state. I was wondering, what has this done to relations between first France and the United States, and then secondly France and Israel? Thank you, Tsepo Soweto.
Thank you, Tsepo, for the question, Ambassador.
I love it. First of all, France is not intending to recognize Palestine. France has recognized the state of Palestine. And to the second and third question, we don't see a contradiction between our relations with the US and our relations with Israel. We have been, since the beginning, since 1916, in favor of a two-state solution, in favor of a state of Israel, the creation of a Jewish foyer, a Jewish state. But of course, since the UN resolution back in 1947, 48, in favor of the two-state solution. And we have been very actively involved in the defense of the Palestinian state. If you remember, the first head of state who actually advocated for the two-state solution was President Mitterrand back in 1982, and he did it at the Knesset, which is the Israeli parliament, which obviously took a lot of guts to do it. And it's actually French soldiers who saved the life of Yasser Arafat, who was then the chief of PLO, in the streets of Beirut in 1983 and in the streets of Tripoli in 1984. So we have always been consistent with the two-state solution. We don't believe that there would be such a contradiction between that solution that was actually, as you remember, supported by President Clinton when he had Yitzhak Rabin and Yasser Arafat and Shimon Peres at the White House for the conclusion of the Oslo process that was to lead to a two-state solution. So the American position on that has not always been to completely, to consider that is not a solution. Second, when it comes really to the relations between France and the US, we are the oldest allies. The US have been at war with basically every country in the world but one, France, and France has been at war with basically every country in the world but one, the US. So we're not going to forget that. Yes, there is a 2-century-old tradition of friendship and relations between France and the US, and we're not into forgetting anything about that. We know that what we owe to American soldiers who came to France during World War I and World War II, and we're not going to forget that. And when it comes to France and Israel, we have always insisted on the security of Israel, and we're not going to back down on that.
Has the relationship been affected with Israel? Because I remember the French president was actually one of the first heads of state to call for a de-escalation and even a ceasefire in Gaza. And I'm talking now about the latest wave of war that was ended by that peace deal that was started by the US President Donald Trump. And I remember at the time, a lot of the heads of state were really scared to be critical of how the US was conducting itself in Gaza and conducting itself in this war. Has that not affected that relationship?
That's the principle of relations between two states. It's not always fantastic. It's not always pinky. Sometimes it's difficult. And obviously the relations are not that easy. But again, when you consider the support that France has brought to Israel since its creation, there's a very strong history, first. And two, you must know that the third Jewish community in the world is the French community, after the US, which is even more substantial than the Israeli one. So the Jews are part of the history of France and the French Republic, and obviously it implies strong relations with Israel.
Here's another question that has come on the WhatsApp line on 072 702 and 702.
Good morning, Clement, and good morning to the ambassador. I just have a slight concern with France's stance on the Iran conflict. They say that they were not involved in the execution of the plan, and yet, day 4 now? We're already told that there's aircraft carriers that are going to the region to go and assist. Is France really not involved? I mean, I remember not long ago, President Trump released, I think it was a WhatsApp chat that he was having with Emmanuel Macron, where Macron said that he thinks that amazing things could be done in Iran. What did he mean by that if he hasn't taken a stance?
Thank you so much for your question, Ambassador.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to be more precise on the topic.
Yeah.
France was neutral at the beginning, was not neutral, but not involved, again, as I said. But on I think it was day 2 of the operation, French military bases in Qatar and in the Emirates were actually attacked by Iranian drones. So, we have to comply to the commitments we have with those countries. We have, again, as I said, we have military agreements, defense agreements with Qatar, with the Emirates, with Bahrain, and with Kuwait. So we are a reliable ally. If anyone attacks our allies, we do react. So that's what we are doing now. So that's why, as I mentioned maybe too quickly earlier, we have aircrafts in the airspace of the Emirates and in Qatar protecting the airspace. And they have been shooting Iranian drones in those airspaces. So that's the answer to our current involvement. It's a defensive position, but we can't say that we are not completely part of it. Because again, we are defending the airspace of Qatar and the Emirates.
So you are there mostly to help in defending and protecting your allies in the region, because they're now also being targeted.
They have been
as
targeted.
Opposed to help the US fight Iran.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And second, if I may, as much as, again, and that was reaffirmed by President Macron, we really, really regret the fact that international law is not being respected, because it will have a long-term effect everywhere in the world. No one in my country can be saddened by the passing of the Iranian dictator. That's absolutely clear. We're talking about someone who has been butchering his own people for years and years and years. So we're not going to cry on his passing.
Yeah. I'm glad what you do there, which is what we really struggle to find out there, is one, you can be repulsed by the violation of international law, but you can also actually raise concerns about the regime under the supreme leader who has now been assassinated, and what that has meant for the people of Iran and what the human right record is in that country. We've got some more questions that are coming through as well. I've got my own questions as well that I want to ask. I want us to touch on the Africa-France summit as well that's scheduled. I've got some questions about that, so we'll get into that.
And now,
It's back to Clement Manyathela.
this is 702.
It's going up to 9 minutes now before 11 o'clock. David, you are calling us from Randburg. Good morning.
Good morning to you, and good morning to the ambassador. I wanted to publicly acknowledge the very positive and supportive role that the French government have played in our basic education sector.
Mm-hmm.
They've been incredibly generous in supporting our technical and vocational training, and it's a contribution that they have made that is unfortunately not widely disseminated. So I thought, well, let me just phone in and say thank you publicly.
Oh, that's wonderful. David in Randburg, thank you so much. So you're involved as well as France in assisting with our basic education system.
Yeah, thank you very much for that testimony. And indeed, that's something we're very proud of because it's a game changer. First of all, as you said, sir, French companies and the French government have been trying and have managed to organize some vocational training in South Africa, which is, of course, extremely important. And, I was in Western Cape over the last days and weeks, and I went to a place in Ado, in Eastern Cape, actually, where a French lady has created a school for hospitality, and she's bringing up young men and women from the disadvantaged suburbs, neighborhoods, and she trains them to become chef, to become pastry chef, bakers, waiters, etc. And she's managing to kind of send them to great hotels and soon to the future Club Med resorts on the Dolphin Coast of KwaZulu-Natal. So that's the kind of vocational training that we are helping build. And there's another thing that is absolutely instrumental too, is the early childhood development program that we have helped deploy in the Northwest Province, and that's also absolutely critical, and we're very proud of that.
Yeah. Here's the last voice note we'll play on 072-702-1702.
Hi, Clement and the team. The ambassador suggested that nobody should feel sorry for the Iranian regime or brutal regime. But the same ambassador is still protecting Saudi Arabia. It's also a brutal regime. There is no democracy in Saudi Arabia. Isn't that you are flip-flopping? David in Melrose.
Thank you so much, David. Ambassador?
That's a very good question, and I don't know if I can have a purely diplomatic answer. It is obvious that Saudi Arabia is not a democracy. They don't share our values, our shared values. But we don't see Saudi Arabia supporting terrorist movements around the world. We don't see the king of Saudi Arabia or the heir to the throne butchering the young Saudis in the streets of Riyadh or Jeddah. That's things we don't see. And Saudi Arabia is not a destabilizing power in the region. So that makes a strong difference.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have, as France, troops in some of the Sahel countries like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, Senegal, Ivory Coast?
No, we don't.
Oh.
We have been invited by the new non-elected authorities of these three countries to leave. So that's what we did. After 10 years of military commitment on their demand to fight the jihadists coming from the north, we lost many soldiers. We paid the price in terms of blood and treasure to the support and the protection of the elected governments who are no more. But we do comply with the request of the current authorities, de facto authorities. So we left. And it's also true that we had two military bases in Mali and in Niger that we closed. And we also closed other military bases in Africa on the request of the authorities. That's in Chad and in Senegal. We have two other military bases that have evolved to kind of military academies in Gabon and in Côte d'Ivoire. and but we still have a very strong and very useful military base in Djibouti that was actually instrumental, notably at the time of the evacuation of Khartoum. If you remember that was 3 years ago, because it helped us to evacuate and secure nationals from many countries, including South Africans.
Yeah. A question from Tick on the WhatsApp line, follow up to what I asked now. It says, hi Clement, please ask the ambassador, what's France doing about the former colonies that seem to be forcing French corporates out of their countries, especially here in Africa? That's the first question. The second one, please, can you also ask about the restitution in France that France is looking at for these former colonies? Is that a conversation that's taking place?
So on the first one, I think I answered it. We're not present in Niger or in Mali.
And French corporations? Do you not have any French companies from these former colonies that are now being pushed out? And is that a concern if that's the case?
The authorities in Niger have actually seized a mine and have kind of forced the French company that was operating it to leave. But apart from that, my understanding is that many French companies continue to do business in those countries. But government-to-government relations are not like they used to be, if I can say that in a diplomatic way. On restitutions, so France led the way some years ago already by restituting African artifacts to the countries of origin of those artifacts. We are trying to make it right because, again, of the symbolic significance of them. But making things right is also making sure that those artifacts will be protected and exposed to the public as they should do. And there's a law that is being debated at the French Parliament to establish a framework on the ground of which those restitutions will be organized country by country.
Just lastly, the Africa-France summit scheduled for May, President Macron had described it as a break with these post-colonial reflexes. How is that summit going to help in just strengthening this relationship that France has with larger parts of this African continent?
Well, again, I think the topics that President Ruto and President Macron have selected show the determination to talk about the future. They will talk about health, and my understanding is that they would really appreciate President Ramaphosa to be involved on that topic because he's been, a pioneer back at the time of the beginning of the COVID pandemic. They will talk about business. There will be a business forum on the eve of the summit. Global group CEOs will also be invited at the summit so that they will have a chance to talk to heads of state and government and to talk real business. There will be a focus on youth, and the idea is to show promising projects, promising young talents, and we are right now thinking of what kind of young personalities we could bring to the summit, and notably South African personalities. So I can't give you names because I need to call them first. But South Africa has some great young talents that we believe can have an influence on the whole continent and in the world because of their ability to tell African stories to the world.
Yeah. Ambassador Martinon, thank you so much. This was
Thank you very much. Really it's been a great time.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.